chapter begins by the word which Isaiah, the son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Now, word he saw, this was not a word that came from the Lord. This was a vision that God gave him. So he saw something. This is about Judah and Jerusalem. Remember we talked about the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes, and southern kingdom, the 2 tribes. This is about the southern kingdom of Judah with its capital, Jerusalem. Now, Isaiah is going into a prophecy right now, and this will be taking place in the next 3 chapters. Chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4 is going to be part of the same prophecy. God has shown Isaiah things about their time, things about near future, and things about the millennium. When I say millennium, do you guys know what I'm talking about? Most of you do, but for those of you who might not, millennium is the time period where after Jesus' second coming, where he will set up a kingdom that will last 1,000 years. That's why it's called the millennium, 1,000-year reign of Jesus. He will be reigning from Jerusalem, we will see also from here, and he will be reigning throughout the earth. The kingdom of God will be on earth in that sense. Now, there will be people living on earth, and they will not all be believers. The believers until that time that have been taken up and that have been with the Lord that whole time are going to come down with his second coming, and they will rule with him. So if you're a believer now and rapture happens or you pass away and go be with the Lord, you will be coming down with the Lord during his second coming to reign with him in that 1,000-year reign of Christ. That's called the millennium. Now, the vision was given about Judah and Jerusalem. Now it shall come to pass in the latter days. Latter days is the time of Messiah, that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established on top of the mountains, and he shall be exalted over all hills. So he's going to reign from there. And even though it's not the tallest mountain, it's the most important mountain. The temple today, it's in Israel, the Temple Mount, the most disputed piece of property on earth. Muslims want it, Jews want it, and everybody's around it. So he's going to be reigning from there. It's not a big mountain, but it will be the focal point of Jesus' reign. He will reign from there. And it will be peaceful. People will say, "Come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord. He will teach us his ways, and we will walk on his paths." Jesus will be there. He will be ruling from there. He shall judge between nations, rebuke many people. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up a sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. So, wars will stop. During the millennium, there will be no wars. There will be no weapons. There will be no guns. There will be no tanks. There will be no firefighters. Fighter planes. Hopefully there will be no need for firefighters, but we'll see. There will be no more war. He shall judge between nations and shall rebuke many people. Now, since this is not the new heavens and the new earth, this is still the world we will be on, the same planet, and not everybody will be believers. As you know, people are going to know Jesus. People are going to know he's reigning from there with the saints, but some still will not choose to follow him. He still have that option to them. So because of that, there will be issues between nations, okay? But God, Jesus, is not going to tolerate any of these nonsenses. There will be no wars. There will be no conflicts. He will judge righteously. He will put an end to it. And he will rebuke many people. People that have issues, people that are in the wrong, he will rebuke them. You see, it's going to be his perfect righteousness. Nobody will be able to say, well, this is wrong and that's... No, everybody will be quiet in front of him because he knows everything there is to know about everything. And when people go to him in a dispute, the outcome will be undeniable. And it will be perfectly peaceful. There will be no more need for weapons, so people will work and provide for their families in a secure and just environment, not worrying about evil. Because why? Also remember, during those days, during the millennial reign of Christ, Satan is also bound for 1,000 years. So he's not influencing the people. He's not influencing the governments or the leaders too. So there is also that part of it. And then, in the verse 5, he pleads with them. He says, O house of Jacob, come and let us walk in the light of the Lord. Just like last time, do you remember how he was calling his children like a loving father? He was saying, come, even though you're sinful, even though you're wretched, I will heal you, I will forgive you, I will cleanse you, just come to me. And here, the same plea, O house of Jacob, come walk in the light of the Lord. You see, we all have a choice. We have a choice to walk in the light and walk in darkness. People, starting from Adam and Eve till the end of time, people always will have this choice. To walk in the light and to walk in darkness. I found this in one of the commentaries that read well, so I want to share this with you. This means you enjoy the blessing of the walking in the life, this commentator explains. This means you enjoy the blessings of the Messiah's reign right now. You do not have to live in dark, depressing, discouraging Christian life. You can walk in the light of the Lord. What is it that gets you down, that brings darkness into your life? How can it compare to the light of the Lord? Is the darkness of the spiritual attack, of an unfaithful friend, of bad circumstances, of shame, of guilt, of anything greater than the light of the Lord? It cannot be so. There are dark moments in our lives. We go through dark circumstances. We go through dark situations. But is any of those dark enough to withstand the light of the Lord? What is the truth about light? As dark as this room can be in the middle of the night, as soon as we put the lights on, what happens? No more darkness. You see, darkness must always have to flee in front of light. Darkness will flee when there is the presence of light. Where there is light, there is no darkness. Only in the absence of light, there is darkness. It is by definition what darkness is, absence of light. So the light of the Lord, those dark areas in our lives. How do we apply the light of the Lord into the darknesses that we go through? Dark times of period, dark circumstances like we just read, dark friendships, financial situations, health situations. When we are down and depressed, we are in darkness. How can we take the light of the Lord and bring it into that situation so that that darkness will flee? Because we just know that if there is light, there is no darkness. So when you go through darkness, when you go through difficulties, when you go through uncertainties, when you're in the midst of dark relationships, bring the light so that the darkness will flee. Always bring the light. Darkness must flee. So in every situation it's different how to bring the light, because every darkness is different, and we are all going through some form of it or have gone through it. So it's up to you to figure out which one it is and how to apply it. But in general, when you bring light into your dark situation, it must be the light of the Lord, not light of the world or your friends or your past experiences or your own understanding. It must be the light of the Lord. Only then your darkness will turn into light. And then he will continue in the verses 6 to 9 to ask them to repent, because their sins were preventing Judah from walking in the light. They were filled with Eastern ways. They're soothsayers like the Philistines, and they're pleased with the children of foreigners. They were given into these Eastern mystical religions, even way back then. They were amazed, mesmerized by these false teachings, these idols, because of all its ornate displays and the mystical approaches and the ambiances that they created through music, through sights and smells and colors and lights and candles and incenses and all those things. They were mystified by it, so they gave into those false teachings. And somebody made this comment. They said, perhaps in the name of diversity, the leaders and people of Judah were allowing the worship of false idols. How applicable it is to today, isn't it? In the name of diversity, we accept everything. You see, tolerating one thing and giving a person to be who they are is one thing, because everybody makes their own choice. But to be immersed in it, to have it overtake you, and dare I say, to be forced into approving it, is not acceptable. You see, the tricks of the enemy doesn't really change throughout centuries. I mean, just recently, we went through a stretch of years where we were bombarded by this very word of diversity, how certain ungodly attributes of people's choices were pushed down our throats. We were forced to accept. We were told we had to accept. Not only accept, but at the same time approve these ungodly, evil practices. Not only that, they were, and probably still are, being taught in schools, being embraced, being championed, in a continuous way. So what are we to do? These false idols, these false gods, these false notions of right and wrong. Well, they were going through the same thing. Remember what Solomon said? There's nothing new under the sun. Everything that has been will be again. So here we are living through the same thing as they did. But God had warned them. This is 730 BC, guys. Okay? We're talking about almost 3,000 years ago. They had these problems. But God warned them. He said, don't go there. Don't do it. And he also added another temptation that was taking them out of following the light of the Lord. Their land is full of silver and gold. The love of money. And there is no end to their treasures, full of horses and chariots and the wealth that they were seeking constantly. The power that came from it. The power that came from the armies, the horses, the chariots, the money, the banking, financial institutions, and these institutions and those institutions. They were just giving into those things. They have become idols. Careers, the power that came, the recognition that came from all that had become an idol in their lives. So God is upset at them. He is warning them. He says, don't go there. Your land is full of idols, work of your own hands, that which their own fingers had made. Worship the money you made, or the company that you work for, or the institution that you're a part of. The thing that you made, and look how talented I am, look what I've made, look what I've accomplished, and look at my degrees, and look at this, and look at that, and look at the other. As Christians, we are told to do our best. Whatever we do, we will do our absolute best. Where we work, where we study, we have to do the best. We're not going to cut corners, we're not going to cheat and this and that. We will do our best. However, the success that comes from that can never be, in and of itself, a means to an end. That cannot be our goal. That cannot be our motive. That cannot be our motivation. The power and the recognition that comes from success is a very dangerous and alluring elixir. It has taken many people out of the light and into darkness. Is it any wonder the New Testament very clearly says, love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Not money itself, the love of it. You could be poor and love money. You could be unsuccessful and still love money. And opposite is also true. You can be successful and not love money. Love of money. Make sure it says your character is free from the love of money. He was warning them repeatedly. And what was the warning? Well, day of judgment. From the terror of the Lord to his majesty. Day of the Lord shall come. Day of the Lord will not be a happy one. Day of the Lord will have judgment, punishment. Day of the Lord is real. If we are unbelievers, if we haven't fully surrendered to the Lord, if we're trying to live the Christian life on the fence, if we're trying to get everything from the world that it offers, at the same time keeping God at an arm's length. You see, we all know where we are. And our daily life is a balancing act. How much of the world is an influence influencing us, and how much of the Lord am I pushing out of the way? We're all different. We're on different stages, and every day these temptations are different. But we all have to know how much we are being influenced. The first step for that is to know that you're susceptible to that influence. Don't think of this for somebody else. And this has nothing to do with how successful you are or how much money you have. Has nothing to do with that. It has to do with how much are you being influenced by the world. How much is it pushing you in certain directions? You see, for that, we need to be mindful of who we are and where we are. We have to have that insight about our spiritual walk. It's so easy to think of others when we think about these issues, guys. That's why it's so important to have that daily devotional time with the Lord, where it's just you and Him, going through the Word, speaking to you directly, showing you where you're failing, showing you where you need to get better, and giving you peace when you lose your peace, giving you encouragement when you're discouraged, giving you direction when you're lost. I see, it's the mirror in which we must look, so that when we do see something that we need to fix, we will fix it. It's the Word. It's the Lord in His Word. Spurgeon said something interesting I want to share with you. I'm going to paraphrase it for you, about living in the light. He said, suppose we're going to Australia in a ship. He lived in a time before us, so they didn't have airplanes back then. So suppose we're going to Australia, traveling to Australia in a sturdy, sound ship. I guess, he said, you could go in that ship on the bottom layer where the rats and the luggages are. You will still arrive to Australia. But, he said, I should much rather prefer to travel first class and get there. His point was, if you're a believer, you're going to heaven. Okay? You're going to get there. But how you get there has so much to do with how much light is in you and how much of the darkness we kill in this life. God bless you.